because if you're just casting at home, no one's there to tell you did a nice job. You're just hoping that you did a good job, I guess.
Right.
And I talk about it when I first started tying flies. When my mom or my aunt or my grandmother on Facebook said they look great, it means nothing. I know they're trying to be sweet, but they don't know what looks good and what doesn't. So it's nice. When I first had someone in the industry, I worked at a fly shop for the summer when I graduated high school. When I had the owner of that fly shop go, "You tie really good flies," I was like, "Okay, I'll take that very seriously."
I don't know. I'd maybe lean on Granny's opinion a little more if I were you.
Yeah, I know. It's nice to have it. It's nice to have that little pat on the back when you need it.
Welcome to Guys Fishing Weekly. We don't just fish, we hook.
Hey, buddy.
Eddie, how are you, dude?
I'm doing, man. How are you doing?
I'm great. Loving life, living large, the huge.
Yeah. Happy 4th of July.
Yes, indeed. Did you have a good 4th?
I did.
You have a little one who still loves probably watching fireworks, right?
This was one of our best holidays thus far.
Oh, nice.
We didn't actually go out and watch fireworks, but our city puts on like a festival, I guess, all day. It was an all-day thing that has been going on apparently for 28 years, but it's the first time we've gone to it. And it was just like kid Megaland fun party. Awesome. Everything was free except for food. Like you had to buy it at the food trucks and stuff, but like all the rides were free. She got her face painted for free. She got, all stuff handed out from the police and the firemen, and like it was awesome. So she was just loving life yesterday.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. Now I have like older teenagers. They're like, screw you. I'm going out with my friends. We're going to watch this here or that there. Yeah. One of my kids was at Top Golf last night watching fireworks from like all over different places. And
that'd be cool.
The other one was off with her buddies. Yeah. So, yeah, we're definitely beyond that stage, but it was fun. They had dinner with us and then they booked. So it was cool. We got to hang out, but yeah, awesome. We got a lot of stuff done yesterday. So it was good. Good 4th.
That's awesome.
So tell me, Ed, what's one thing that you're celebrating this week?
One thing I'm celebrating this week, I guess, would be my daughter. I mean, watching her yesterday run around and have fun. And like, it was one of those times where she was actually starting to kind of experience the world in a way, if that makes sense. I mean, she's obviously been experiencing the world, but like, this was kind of one of those first times where she felt inclined to like run to this thing and then run to that thing, and it wasn't carry me here, carry me there. It was awesome to see her just bounce from thing to thing and just be excited about it all. And so just seeing her do that, it was a really, really cool experience to watch her light up that way. So that's what
Awesome.
I'm celebrating.
Right. That's cool. The wonder of youth.
I don't want to say that I'm celebrating her, her getting older, but I guess in a sense that is kind of what it is. But it was just watching her mind just go, wow. That was cool.
Yeah. Good stuff.
What are you celebrating?
I'm actually, that I am in Colorado. I have a brother who's in Florida, and I have a father who is my mom and dad are in Oregon. So our family's really spread out. And I recently asked my dad and my brother to do a book study, like kind of like a book club. And we're going to jump on and do like a Zoom call to talk about what we've been reading. And so that's cool. So I'm celebrating that. I've kind of like etched some time in my life to kind of get us together, so that we can connect a little bit, because we don't get to do it very often together. And so, so that's kind of cool. I thought of the idea and posed it to them, and they were both on board with it. And so that feels kind of good to be able to have some commonality and some connection with them, because I don't get to do it that often because we're so spread out. So that is definitely a celebration, some time with them. So that's good. Yeah.
Heck yeah. Kudos to you for putting that together. I mean, it's important to schedule that time, I think, because otherwise you can just go along and not accomplish anything, right? You just kind of float along and,
Right.
oh, I need to call
Right.
so-and-so today, or, but to intentionally do it around a set reading piece, that's cool.
Yeah. So hopefully that'll be, hopefully I think we will get some good stuff out of it. So it's good. So I'm super psyched with that. How about, what are you navigating this week?
I think it's kind of an ongoing navigation, but something that I think our last podcast guest kind of brought up, and something I know I am working on and have thought more and more about this week, but it's just the idea of self-talk and having, better self-talk. And it's just something I have to be a little bit more kind to myself about, because I find myself beating myself up for no good reason. So that's kind of my navigation right now, is just how to be a little kinder to myself, and a better friend to myself. I think that's kind of where all friendship really starts, is being a friend to yourself first. And but yeah, it is hard. It's hard not to, especially I'm somebody who kind of hangs the badge of honor of always trying to get better, always improving, and with that comes like just beating myself every which way. So
right. Yeah, no, it's tough. And I think that, I was doing some stuff here at the house yesterday, getting frustrated and pissed at myself, and I start, you know what I mean? I get in that place, and there was a couple times where I just had to stop, sit down, like take some deep breaths, and with the frustration, I was hanging a ceiling fan, and it was just like, it was brutal. It's just awkward work that right? Yeah. And I'm like, this shouldn't take this long. I should be better. I should, and so I can get to that space, and it's just like, okay, stop, breathe, be better to yourself, right? Be gracious to yourself. Yeah. So, and it's an ongoing battle. I love that you're like, it's kind of a constant navigation, because it is, right? There's moments when we're really gracious to ourselves, and other times when we're beating ourselves up. So that's good. I like the consistent work that you try to do with that.
Yeah.
We can all be better with that, I think.
Trying to figure out some better, more intentional ways to work around that and try and build the habit. 'Cause right now it's a pretty weak muscle to talk nice to nice to myself.
Right. Yes,
just,
indeed.
You think about the ways that you talk to your friends, and, your friends, like, I'm sure if I was standing there watching you do that work at your house yesterday, I'd be like, it's okay, man. Like, you're cool. Like, you got this.
Yeah.
Relax. But when you talk to yourself, you're like, you can't do this shit. You suck. You're terrible. Like, your fingers, they keep fumbling. You can't hold on to that, screw. What are you doing? You're just like, just beating yourself up the whole time. It's terrible. It's just crazy to watch.
Oh, it's funny.
Watch
and
the difference.
Yeah. And listening back to some of the stuff when we're on the river and we're, doing stuff, and like some of the funniest things are when I listen to myself, like, just like beat the shit out of myself after a bad cast or getting snagged in the tree, and like the names I call myself, like when I'm out fishing, when I screw something up. Yeah. It's hilarious. When you go back and listen to that stuff. So those are the things that, honestly, we got to continue to work at. It's not easy. We are our worst critics, for sure.
Oh, it's wild. What are you navigating?
I'm currently, my daughter's gotten some interest from some softball colleges, and so I am navigating that recruiting process, and how do I support. And we had a conversation with a coach. She's in this big tournament right now, and I've never done anything like that. And so, asking the right questions, and, you want to come across as, somebody that is helpful to your daughter and all those kinds of things, but I don't want to be the lead in it. I want her to lead it. And so where's that balance? So I'm definitely now navigating, how can I support, how can my wife and I support, and not hover and not be, those kinds of things. So, so that's an interesting navigation. I mean, it's super exciting for her. And, exciting for us too, but navigating that whole thing, like what's my role in that? Because it's really about her, but, so I want to be supportive and let her really drive it, but be supportive. So, but yeah, so it's kind of fun stuff. It's kind of a cool navigation piece.
That is a cool navigation
and never done before. So, yeah.
Do you have any others in your life who have like kind of gone through similar things or that you can lean on?
Yes.
I have no advice.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I've definitely talked to a couple of my buddies and some people who have gone through it. And so they've given me some tips with it. So that's been good. And leaning on her coach as well, like her current coach. He's done a lot of work with it and had a lot of experience. So he's helping coach us too through the process. So that's good.
That's awesome.
So yeah, definitely leaning on others in that community to help me navigate this stuff big. So that's been super helpful.
Well, congrats to her. Congrats to you guys. That's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I don't know. She's got some decisions to make, that's for sure.
Right.
And again, yeah. So we'll be there for her to help her, but ultimately she's got to pick and choose what's good for her. So
yep. Well, this week we have another interview we're leaning into.
Yeah. Good conversation this week.
Today we have an educational and insightful conversation with award-winning fly tyer Garrett Lesko. He's a winner of the FFI's Fly Tyer of the Year award, co-owner of the Oregon Fly Tying, speaker, teacher, and all-around great guy. We talk about topics including fly fishing competitions, the diversity of fishing opportunities in Oregon, some top-secret fishing locations, community and fishing clubs, the trajectory of the industry, and so much more. Let's hop into it.
Sounds good, dude.
Hey, Garrett, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Doing great.
Welcome to the podcast. We're glad to have you on here.
I'm glad to be here.
Finally some fly tires. Yeah.
yeah. There's if I'm known for anything, I guess it's that.
Nice. That's awesome.
So tell us a little bit of background about yourself.
So generally I've been fly fishing and fly tying for about 15 years now. So a little bit of time doing that. Started in high school, and the way I kind of started was we did this thing in my high school called mini sessions. So when the seniors went on their senior trip, the school year was technically wrapped up, and so kids could go and do these like little 3-day kind of events that parents or teachers would kind of host. And they could be anything from, watching culturally significant movies or going and, exploring new food and restaurants. Some were like going to the beach. And I went to one to Odell Lake. So if your listeners are familiar with Oregon, Odell Lake is this big lake on the way over to Central Oregon outside of Eugene. So if you go to Eugene and head east, it's on the way. And it's kind of well known because there's a Macintosh game, like an 8-bit Macintosh game called Odell Lake, and you play as the fish in the lake. It's very funny if you look it up on YouTube. But the big thing it has is a fish called a Mackinaw, which is just the local term for a lake trout. So that's kind of the deal. So we were going there to fish for kokanee and lake trout, all gear, all that kind of stuff. And that's what I did predominantly fishing wise. So, Oregon, living here in Oregon, fishing is a pretty popular hobby people get into. And I got into it. My family's not an outdoorsy family. I'm definitely the most outdoorsy person in my immediate family by far and away. But I kind of, I did trout stuff, you get spinners, sink, worms on the bottom or power bait bobbers. And that got pretty boring pretty fast for me. And then I got into, gear fishing for bass, and that was really fun. But when I went on this Odell trip, I was really into fishing in general. But a buddy of mine who had fly fished from a younger age brought his fly rod and a float tube. And when we came back from the boats trolling around the lake for kokanee and Mackinaw, he went out and caught this great rainbow, and then he fished the creek that flew out of the lake and caught a bunch of fish. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. And so that kind of planted the seeds. And then that summer, when you're young, I was 14. So I don't have a car. I don't have a job. I don't really have anything to do. So you poke around in the garage, you go play outside, you go ride your bike places. And I poked around the garage one day and found a fly tying vise. My dad had probably bought it at some point just as like a hobby thing. And it was an old Thompson original. And I thought, oh, I remember the fly fishing thing I did a few months ago. I wonder what this is. And try to tie a fly with what else I could find in the garage and what was in the little kit. And they were terrible, but it really kind of started to itch that part of my brain of like creativity and, the fishing thing. Because at that point in fishing, I'm seeing it more and more now in gear fishing where guys are making their own lures or their own soft plastics or things like that. But at that time, I hadn't heard of anything like that. So I thought, oh, this is if you want to create something to fish with, it's got to be fly fishing and fly tying. So I went down to the local fly shop, bought a little starter kit, and just started tying flies. I had that friend come over and show me a couple ropes, but then I just kind of took it from there and just self-taught myself. So because, again, I started when I was 14, didn't have a job, didn't have a car, so it was a lot of library visits and borrowing books. It was a lot of photocopying magazine articles to have on a table to like reference. And then YouTube was kind of hitting its I want to say it's early years of fly tying on YouTube. I'm sure there's obviously more, it's always been there kind of thing, but it was kind of hitting that like initial renaissance in YouTube. So that's when like Tightline Productions, Tim Flagler's company, kind of kicked off. Like I remember watching like the first, I might have been 10 videos late from when it started. I used to watch them on Vimeo. That's how original I was watching that kind of stuff. So I was watching stuff because I was looking for anything. I was 14 years old, finally getting access to high-speed internet in high school kind of thing, or middle school. So I used to have to ride my bike to the library to play on the computer, on the internet when I was younger, because we just didn't have internet at home. It's very weird going from a time that's like you had to log on to the internet, and now you are never not on the internet.
Right.
So it's such a weird, like growing up through that time is interesting, but I'd print off stuff, blog posts, articles, watch YouTube videos. So I had Tightlands Productions. I remember watching Fly Fish Food stuff when it wasn't Fly Fish Food. It was Curtis Fry's like personal channel. Other ones was the Caddis Fly Shop down in Eugene. That was another big one. The Caddis Fly had Jay Nicholas, and he would do tying videos for him down there. And if I go back and watch those videos, I don't know how I even saw the fly in the video. It's all 240p, the color set, it's zoomed out too far, the colors are off. It's like, how did it? But you made do with what you had at the time. It was like it was so cool to see a video of it, not just hand-drawn pictures or still photography of something. So but yeah, I kind of took it and ran and just kind of self-taught, and I became pretty critical of my own work, trying to get better and better. There's a point where I kind of got spoiled with how much stuff was out there, and I just started tying everything I could get my hands on. And my proportions were off. Nothing looked right. The colors were weird. I didn't know how to source materials very well. It was tough. And I went, these aren't good, and kind of started from scratch. I remember spending like 2 days cutting beads off of hooks because the beads were more expensive than the hooks. So I was willing to cut the eyes off, take the beads off so I could save, because all the money I had at the time, at 14, 15, 16 was either going to gas when I could drive, car insurance when I could drive, or it was going to fly tying stuff. And, you had to make do with what you got. And so kind of did that. And then fly fishing came naturally afterwards. I tied for probably that summer. And then that fall I went, well, I got to use some of these. And so found an old reel, bought I think it was a Scientific Angler. If you're familiar with the air cell line that they have, that like $30 fly line, basically. I bought it at, we have a little, gosh, I don't even know what you'd call it. If you're West Coast people know, it's Buy Mart. It's essentially just like kind of like a Target and Walmart, but it's like a general store. It's very weird. It's big, like one of those stores, but feels. I think the youngest person that shops there is 57. Like it's really, it's very weird. It's like kind of a local kind of like general store, but we didn't have. I didn't.
Right.
I was just looking for something. If I could, I would buy it at a fly shop, but when you don't have money, you just buy wherever. And then a buddy gave me a fly rod that he found in the garage that he wasn't using, and I just made do with that, and it just kind of, pun intended, it really hooked me. I mean, I just got it and went, this is something. And I haven't fished a gear rod for anything besides sturgeon in probably 8 to 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Somewhere right around that range. Yeah. Any fish you can cast to, I'm fishing on a fly rod. I'm not like a sturgeon you can't cast. You're fishing them in 50, 60, 70 feet of water with
Right.
a half-pound cannonball on there in the middle of the Columbia or Willamette River. You're not doing that on a fly rod. So even if you wanted to. So it's one of those things.
And they get big, don't they?
Yeah. The biggest one I've caught is 7 feet.
Wow.
So they do get big. There's some like 14, 16 footers up on the Columbia, and then up in British Columbia they have some on the Fraser that are really big like that. So that's really cool. My uncle works in fisheries for Pacific Power, and so that's how I was able to go up and do it. I would go up in there with him and fish for sturgeon or salmon or something, and that's when I would fish gear, stuff like that. Otherwise, I mean, deep sea charter fishing I would do it on, or sturgeon, really. Otherwise, it's always a fly rod. I go to the jetty and fish off the jetties for rockfish, sling cod, all that with a fly rod, bass, trout, everything. I just do it all with a fly rod now. It's just, I have so much fun doing it. There's no reason to not. So
right. Yeah. That's awesome.
That's been 15 years in the making.
That's awesome. That you've taken your hobby to that kind of level. Something that started out that way. And that's the great thing about, I think about fly fishing is that it does just that. I wish I would have got hooked when I was younger, like you. That would have been, given me a lot more years of doing it, but it does that to you. It definitely does that to you.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
It really scratches an itch, I think. And I see it in a lot of people, especially now at the level I'm at now, where I do a lot of education and a lot of work with my local fly fishing club and speaking and doing all these other kind of things that I do in the industry. It's really interesting how it gets people wanting to know more and more. Everyone wants to know it's very information satisfying. People want everything. I posted some pictures of, I went fishing, did some fishing at a central southern Oregon lake called Diamond Lake, and I posted it on a Facebook page, and the amount of people wanting, any piece of information I had on it was incredible. It was just very interesting to kind of see that.
Yeah, the pics of the tiger trout were amazing. Those are some big tiger trout.
No, my buddy Han, he was very proud of that. He didn't catch the most fish of the day. He definitely caught the least out of between the other friend and myself, but he caught the big one. That is. I wrote a blog post. It's on my website now. I'll start sharing it soon. I just kind of like to let it post and sit for a minute. But those fish were planted 8 years ago, so 2016. There's 25,000 of them planted back then to try to deal with the tui chub issue in the lake. And so that's an 8-year-old fish.
Wow.
Or at least an 8-year planted fish, probably a 10-year fish.
Right.
So 26 inches, 10 pounds, a pound a year. That's that's a pretty big fish.
Right.
They're eating well.
Good fish. Right. I feel like, here in Colorado, it's trout predominantly. We don't have, there's some warm water lakes that are great for bass and some warm water fish, but the amount of different kinds of the variation of species that that you're fishing for and tying flies for as well, I imagine that keeps you busy to be able to do that kind of creative side of fly tying, for all those different species. Talk a little bit about how that's developed for you.
So I tell people I'm a fly tyer first because that's how I started. I started tying flies before I even started fishing, and I can probably count on my 2 hands or less the amount of flies I've bought. So 10 flies or less that I've bought my entire time fly fishing. Everything that I have ever fished ever has been a fly that I've tied personally, which most guys can't say. When I look at the world of fly fishing and fly tying, fly fishing is very small in the grand scheme of the fishing and outdoor, especially the outdoors world, but also small in the fly fishing world. That the people who tie flies is really small. And then those who tie flies do not tie it at, when I say the level, I'm not saying just the skill level, I'm just saying the period volume level that I tie at. So I'm tying a ton of flies. I tell people usually between 300 to 500 dozen a year. It's kind of what I shoot for. There's not like I have hit a quota or something. It's just I almost tie every single day. Every day that I'm not fishing or doing something, like I'll tie probably after I'm off the phone with you guys, done here. Not a ton, maybe, half a dozen flies, something like that. So, but yeah, so we have a ton of fish. So we have in Oregon, we have every type of anadromous fish. So in the salmonid family, so we got Chinook, coho. We have a little bit of sockeye. It's not really planted. They're kind of just incidental kokanees that get over the dams. We have chum, and I guess we don't have pink. That's the one salmon we don't have down here is pink salmon in Oregon. But then we have steelhead. We have sea run cutthroat. We do have some rivers that have striped bass. We have fish. We have a type of steelhead strain called a half pounder. So it's only in 3 rivers in the United States. One of them is the Rogue River in Oregon. And it's essentially a rainbow that runs on the same cycle as a sea run cutthroat. So they get a little bit more than a half pound, but they call them half pounders. They're not a full mature steelhead at that point. They've only gone out for a little period of time and come back. So we have all that. Then we have brown trout, rainbow trout. We have cutthroat. We have coastal cutthroat, which I think every Western state has their own variation of a cutthroat, their own species, but we have coastal cutthroat, which are anadromous, and they turn into the sea run cutthroat. We have chars, we have brook trout that are planted all over the place. We have bull trout. We have the Metolius River over in Central Oregon is probably one of the more famous fly fishing rivers in Oregon because you can target bull trout specifically, and they get big, like 3 to 4 feet at the most, kind of thing. And it's really cool. They chase the kokanee up from the lakes up the Metolius. So in the fall, you can catch these humongous fish. They'll eat a 9-inch streamer in a single bite, or eat your rainbow that you have hooked on your 5X. It's really quite incredible. And the water is a spring creek, so it's gin clear. So you can see everything happening.
That's one of the few rivers that I've actually fished in Oregon. Was the Metolius.
It's stunning. It's fly fishing only in a lot of
Beautiful.
parts. It is. It is exactly when people think of Central Oregon, that is what they think of. They usually, they know of the Deschutes, they know of this river or that lake or that thing, but just the environment when you drive up it, when you're there, and it's really cool to drive to the headwaters because you can just watch the river bubble out of the ground, and then that's the river. That's the river. So it's kind of cool. So we have that, and then we have a ton of. I know I'm missing some natives. Oh, we also have ocean fish, so you can fish for lingcod, black and copper rockfish, blue rockfish, all the other variations, Irish lords, cabezons. That's all jetty stuff or open water, off a boat kind of thing. And then we have a myriad of invasive species kind of stuff. So smallmouth, largemouth for sure. All the different types of panfish. There's some guys who go catfish and do stuff like that. So what I tell people is if you want to catch a fish in Oregon, you can every single day of the year, and everything's within quote unquote an hour from itself. So you could fish the coast in the morning, fish the valley in the afternoon, and fish Central Oregon in the evening. It's really
right.
It's everything's very close, and you can catch fish everywhere on a fly rod. So it's really a unique state, and everyone goes to Montana or Colorado for like the mecca of fly fishing, and I'm kind of glad because it leaves stuff open for us here in Oregon.
Right. Yeah, we get crowded here.
The joke I tell people is, if you want to avoid crowds in Colorado, you go to Wyoming.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah, you have to leave the state, and that's not a thing here in Oregon. I live in Lebanon, which is just east of I-5 near Corvallis, and I have the South San Am that flows right through town. I can fish it in 10 minutes from now or less. So and it's cutthroats and rainbows, and I won't see a single other person fishing on that river.
That's
there
amazing.
Might be some people that float by, drinking beer in their floaties, but I'll be the only guy, not only just the only guy fly fishing, the only guy fishing it in the sections that I fish. So it's really nice.
That's great. Absolutely.
You're really selling the state of Oregon to us.
Yeah, and all your listeners. So, they're more than welcome. There's plenty of space. If I talk to old timers, they complain about, you can't get away from crowds. You can't avoid this, that, or the other thing. I was just at East Lake, which is over in Central Oregon, over the weekend. And there's guys fishing it. There's a lot of guys fishing it, but there's so much room. You had the entire lake. There's guys fishing it from the shore. No one's going to mess with them. They're totally within, they're going to catch fish, but they're kind of on their own. There's guys with boats, guys with float tubes, guys with pontoons. I rented a boat and just doodled around. It was really tough fishing, but it was, you have the whole, not the whole lake to yourself, but there's not like, you're not going to get there and go, oh, all the spots are taken. That's never happens.
Wow. That's fantastic. Yeah, we usually have to go bushwhack small creeks or, get up into, go brookie hunting and get up into the wild in order to get away from, I don't particularly go to the big rivers where there's, where they're hunting in the troughs for the big fish. I like to go off and not see people if I can. So that's awesome.
That's the nice part is we can do that too.
Right.
mean,
yeah, that variation is amazing.
Yeah, high mountain lakes if we want to. So there's a lake just outside of Sisters called Three Creeks. It's the highest altitude lake in Oregon, as far as I know, that you can just straight up drive to, and it's 6550. That's the elevation, which, Colorado standards, that's lowland water kind of thing.
Right.
For us, that's high. That's really high. You can hike up further to higher lakes and do that kind of stuff, but to be able to drive to a lake, and I fished it on a Tuesday. The only reason there was people there was because I told people I was going to be there at my club and other clubs, and they kind of met up there kind of thing. Okay. Otherwise, it's
right.
Once everything starts heating up, end of July, August, things will get busier because what we call it here in Oregon, I don't know what you guys call it in your neck of the woods, but we call it the paddle hatch.
Rubber hatch, yeah. We got the rubber hatch.
All that kind of stuff, and then you're just and the boating etiquette is horrendous. I've had it where I've cast my fly out, 50, 60 feet, and someone just paddles right over the top, in between me and where my fly landed. I'm like, okay, he's, it's a young kid. I'll let him slide or, whatever kind of thing.
We call it the rubber hatch here on a lot of the rivers because the rafters are coming down, especially during this time. And it's funny you say that because yesterday I was out and fishing on Clear Creek, and it was high and it's blowing, but I was fishing streamers and catching fish. And these two rafters came down and pulled in right over my line, right into the hole I was fishing. Because I'm just fishing, against the banks, kind of flat water behind structure where I can get some soft water. And these guys pulled right in, two rafts right after. They didn't even acknowledge me. They didn't say, sorry, nothing. It was just like they just pulled in like they owned the place. I was so mad. I just reeled in and walked off. I was like, so, yeah. So it's funny you say that.
That's when they don't get the wave. That's where I'm usually at.
Yeah, right? Oh, gosh. Yeah, that's hilarious that you say that because I just had that experience. But yeah, we call that the rubber hatch, like all the rafters coming down the river.
Funny.
Yep. Yeah. So when it's runoff season and the rivers are high, the rubber hatch goes off.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. That's the precipitating event that gets that together. Yeah. Us, it's school's out and it's hot outside because all the water's cold typically. It stays pretty cold through the process, but through the summer into the fall. But it's just, because Central Oregon gets really hot, like in the hundreds. It's a high desert. So it'll get, they'll have multiple days that are 100, 110. And that just brings out a ton of people. If you go into downtown Bend, you can almost not see the river with how many people that are just floating down it.
Wow.
So, but it's doable. Like Diamond Lake, for example, a great thing I wrote in my blog. If you want to have the lake to yourself, show up at noon. All the gear guys limit out by noon and they're off the lake and there's like 4 guys left fishing it. It's really cool to have that opportunity. Like I remember I was there on Memorial Day weekend, Saturday of Memorial Day weekend, and it's like 12:30 and I look around and went, where is everybody? Where'd they go?
Wow.
And and because they have speed limits, they can't wakeboard or, pull tubes around. So it's only people who are fishing it. And there was 2 big pontoon boats. That was it on the far side of the lake. Otherwise, it was just like 2-3 of us out there fly fishing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, that kind of seclusion's great.
Yeah, it's nice because then if you wanted to, we didn't stay, but if you stayed till like the late evening, you would have it all. You'd have the evening hatch and everything all to yourself.
That's awesome.
It's a dream come true right there.
The dream. So how did Oregon Fly Tying come together? Tell us a little bit about that company and what you guys are trying to accomplish with that.
So that is with Garrett and I. So it's a website that Garrett and I run. Garrett Wood is a friend, mentor of mine, and we've been friends for probably 10 years now. It's hard to keep track. It's just been a while. And we've consistently, besides during COVID, we've consistently tied flies every other Thursday through that period of time. So at pre-COVID, what we did is we had a group of us that was very informal that met at a restaurant, and we would tie flies on every other Thursday. And then the opposite Thursdays, Garrett and I would just tie just us. So lots of tying, and then we've always been in contact and very close. And so he works in software, that's his day job, and then he used to make websites for professors who needed to run like experiments or have like a splash page for students or whatever. So he would do that on the side, kind of as like a side deal. And so he's good with the website stuff, and I've done a little bit as well. But his other big thing is photography. So if you look at the Oregon Fly Tyer Instagram, that's all Garrett's photography.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah, he's really good at it, and most of my high res photos, I just bring flies to him and have him take pictures of it. I mean, sometimes it's an iPhone, but if I really want it, I'll have him take pictures of it. Like I got a GoPro for my birthday, so I've been playing with that this year, and so I'll stockpile a ton of footage, edit it this fall, and release it. But if I want stills of flies in that footage so people can see what I'm fishing, I'll just have him take the shots of it. He's really good at it. So he has the photography, and I really like writing, and so we thought, well, instead of each having our own website and just like going back and forth and trying to, I write for him, he takes pictures for me, let's just have one website where, we don't sell a ton of flies for that. A lot of our flies are either sold through connections, like word of mouth, friend of a friend kind of thing, or through social media. People will reach out on Instagram or Facebook or things like that. Like I had an order last year. The guy is going to Bolivia. He's going to Bolivia next month to fish for Dorado. And he saw an article I wrote in Fly Fishing and Fly Tying Journal. It's now a discontinued magazine, but at the time he got the issue. He saw my flies and went, I want him to tie my flies for it. So that's the other fly tying stuff I do. Is I'll do destination stuff. I was really going to dial into that in 2020, but then travel shut down. So I went, well, I'm going to pivot a little bit, and I did some other stuff in the meantime. But there's no fly shops in Bolivia. There's no fly shops in Mongolia or Kamchatka or Christmas Island. And there's not a lot of fly shops. Before this, we were talking about fly shops around. Oregon has a ton of fly shops, and there's some fly shops that specialize in travel, and they might have a few flies that you need for GTs or peacock bass. But a fly shop in Duluth, Minnesota, is not going to have GT flies. It's not going to, if you're in Connecticut, you're not going to find a lot of bonefish flies or what have you. And so the only way to do that is either you order it online and hope that the flies you got are good, or you have someone tie them for you, or you tie them yourself.
Garrett, talk about, give us about your mission. So you kind of started this thing. Clearly you've gone into speaking and presenting and doing all these things at fly clubs. Was that always a part of it, for Oregon Fly Tying, or was it just to get people into it?
Well, where it kind of came out of is, so when the pandemic hit, everything was shut down. And I found that for my mental health, I like looking forward to something. Motorcycle went by. Hopefully,
and motorcycles. You like?
So during the pandemic, I found that looking forward to something was really good for my mental health. It just helped a ton. And when that kind of all went away, it was not fun, because I didn't know if I would still have a job afterwards. We were, what was going to happen? Where was things? Everything was uncertain at the time. No one knew what was going to happen or what things would change. And so that first kind of 2020, I look back, I was doing archive work on my photos. I went, I don't have many photos from then. Makes sense. I wasn't doing a lot. And so what happened is we have this big show here in Oregon called the Northwest Expo. It's technically the Northwest Fly Tying and Fly Fishing Expo. It's every March. It's in Albany. It's the largest fly tying show in the West.
Okay.
So the only other bigger show in the country is the Fly Tying Symposium in New Jersey. And I think that's in the fall, if I remember correctly. So it's a huge show. It's over almost 200 fly tyers that are there tying flies, and there's vendors and casters and the whole thing. I look forward to it every year. And the country basically shut down that same weekend. So the show didn't happen. And then the show didn't happen the next year or the following year. And so what happened is I went, well, if it's not going to happen in 2020, 21, or 22, I need something to do in this time. I really like the community of fly fishing and fly tying. And so one thing I decided to do was reach out to clubs, because I know it's hard to getting guests to speak at them, and said, I'll do a Zoom deal with you. You guys are already all meeting on Zoom. I'll log in. I made it really affordable for them, because I just didn't know what I needed to do. And used it to kind of cut my teeth on the speaking thing. And that was really good, because it brought me out there. I had a moment yesterday at work, actually. I was talking with somebody else at work, and someone had come back from lunch, and they were going to one of those, kind of like a Goodwill. We have a place here called St. Vincent de Paul's. It's kind of like one of those donate and resell kind of places. And he was at that place looking at this cabinet, and another guy was looking at it too. And he said, I'm trying to find it for my garage. And the other guy said, well, I need it for fly fishing stuff and fly tying stuff. And he said, well, he went, I'll try it. I work with this guy named Garrett, and he ties flies. He went, oh, yeah, everybody knows Garrett. And I think that's part of it, is not to be like, oh, look at me, like I'm popular in Oregon. But I think it's a testament to taking that leap and going into like, oh, let me speak at clubs. I speak at the show all the time. I have some areas of expertise. There's areas that I didn't feel super comfortable with, that I didn't go into, and there's certain ones I did. And then what happened was I also got into competition stuff. So with it, I went, well, they're outside, you don't have to work, masks weren't the deal. You're on a boat, or you're on the bank or on the river. And so I got into fly fishing competitions and started competing in the Western region. And they're very fun. The downside to them, if there's anything, is if you want to be really good at it, you have to practice a ton. And that sounds great, because you get a fish, you go, oh, I get a fish a ton. Right? But it's not the fishing you think it is. It's work. It's and not in the sense like you have to go to the mines. It's not that brutal. But you have to work on certain skills within there. So if it's I can only fish 5x. That means you need to practice with 6, 7, 8, and 9x, and be willing to break off a bajillion flies and lose a ton of fish and do that. And that's hard to do if you like catching fish. Right. Or you go, well, I'm not really great with a motor or using a drogue, which is used in competitions. So that means you got to go rent boats or buy a boat and practice and have someone else in the boat with you and coordinate all that. And that's not easy either. So competitions this year have been few and far between in the West. But if some come up, I'm probably going to do them. Unless to be on Team USA and compete at the interregionals and regional and national events. It's more so just because you get to fish with guys who are equally as obsessed with fishing as you are. Mm-hmm. And that's few and far between. Even working with clubs and stuff like that, it just doesn't. They're just not as like into it. So that's really fun. But with the Oregon fly tying stuff, and so after COVID, when COVID dropped out and people were doing in-person stuff, the expo came back. And when I had that first expo last year in 2023 in Albany, I went, oh, that's the ticket. This is what I've been missing, is this kind of event to have. And so I really doubled down on that. I said, I'm going to put a lot of effort into my local club who supports this. The whole idea of the show is it's put on by Oregon International Fly Fishing, or the Oregon chapter of IFF. And so it's all the clubs in Oregon working together to put on the show. That's the intent behind the whole thing. And so I went, well, I should be, if I'm going to be in this and I'm going to be somebody who wants to promote fly fishing and continue fly fishing and bring it out of, I don't think anyone in my club would take offense to this, but take it out of its geriatricness a little bit. There's these guys, I'm 29, just turned 29 this year. I'm the youngest guy by at least 15 years. And then if you exclude that one guy, I'm the youngest guy by probably 40 years, 35 years, which means that if these guys go, which it's always just a matter of time, that means it's just going to be me just hanging around and making, if you ever seen Last Man on Earth, I'm going to have a bunch of different activity ball friends talking fly tying. And I don't want that to be the case. Luckily, I've brought other guys into it and stuff like that. And speaking of the clubs has really helped, because it creates those connections. Like there's a brand new fly fishing club in Oregon called the Elbow Droppers. They're in Salem, and all they do is fly casting. They're all either certified casting instructors, master casting instructors, single hand or two hand, or they're in pursuit of that. So they either want to get their CI, their MCI, something along those lines. And so they do free casting clinics every Saturday, every week of the year, down on the Willamette River in Salem. So that means if you want to go, I want to get better at fly casting, or I don't know anything about it. I got a fly rod for my birthday, or I bought one during the pandemic. You can buy a 9-foot 5-weight to save your life in 2020 because everyone else bought them. So you go, I want to actually use this. That is something out there that I'm not a part of that club, but I know everybody in it. I've met them through speaking here, doing those kind of things. So, and it's a great resource. And I can then, for a lack of a kind of way to put it, is I've kind of become an ambassador between all these different clubs, not on purpose, very much unintentionally become the ambassador, but essentially that's what I've become through it. So the speaking thing is really good. I like the Oregon stuff because I get to share, the blogs, I get to write about stuff, I get to talk about flies, fly tying, fly fishing, and then the speaking's another thing, and then selling flies here and there. Again, I sell flies, I don't want to say regularly, but from time to time. Again, it's all word of mouth stuff, and I try to do small batch stuff for people. So guys going to Bolivia for Dorado, or I tied flies years ago now, but it was a guy going to Mongolia for Taimen, or going for GTs and Christmas Island. So those are the kind of things that I like doing if I'm going to do them. I just tied like a dozen flies for my local fly shop so they could have flies to sell guys to fish on the jetty. There's no jetty, Pacific Coast jetty commercially available flies. So, and I've been going to the shop for 15 years. I mean, I've definitely earned my shop seat to go in there and just sit and hang and hassle a customer that comes through and the shop owner and whatever. So, but yeah, the kind of the intention behind it is just to be a resource for people. And be the resource that I've wanted. That's kind of the way I've always done things, is if it's something I want and it doesn't exist, you just kind of got to make it. That's kind of how most businesses start. That's how most innovation happens. You go, well, there's nothing to solve this problem. I mean, I've always wanted someone to be very cut and dry about, like, this is what works, this is what doesn't, this is what works, or this is what works for me, this is what hasn't worked for me, this is where I've gone. I'm very much one of those guys who's not like a secret location guy, unless I get it from somebody else and they specifically tell me, don't tell them.
Right.
So, like, for example, when I fished Diamond, the guys there had tied a variation of a fly that they really liked. I did not disclose the variation or the fly or anything like that. They told me not to, so I didn't tell them. So, or if the shop owner says, hey, I've been going to this river forever, here's a spot for you to try next time you go to it, I realize he's not telling me that because he tells every guy who comes in the shop that. He's telling me because I've been coming to the shop for 15 years and spent countless amounts of dollars there. I've earned it by my commitment to the whole thing. And that's what I would treat other people with. But generally speaking, if someone's like, oh, I want to go to the jetty, how do I fly fish off the jetty? I have one podcast where I talked about that exclusively. I've talked about it on other ones. I have 4 blog posts. I'm an admin on the Oregon Saltwater Facebook fly fishing page, fly fishing Facebook page. I will tell anyone and everyone, we do fish alongs at least once to 3 times a year out on the jetties on the Oregon coast. So those are the kind of things where I'm like, yeah, get out here. Because if you guys showed up, for example, and brought 300 to 500 of your friends to show up, we would all have room on the jetty.
Right.
There's so much space and there's so much water and there's so many fish. We went out and there were 6 of us, and between the 6 of us that went to the last fish along I did, I think combined we caught almost 150 fish.
Wow.
So there's plenty of fish to go around, and that was from 7 to 11:45.
Right.
So in that short period of time, we all caught fish. I think the one person only caught 2 and someone caught 50. So, sometimes it's a little but everyone had fish to the hand. Everyone hooked a fish and caught a fish, which if you're new to it is huge. Now, I have learned when I've taught people how to fly fish, I taught my ex how to do it. I've taught my current girlfriend how to do it because I'm always doing it. They want to learn a little bit here and there. And anyone else I've taught or try to encourage, you got to catch a fish right away. It doesn't matter. If you're doing a casting lesson, there's only so much attention people will have. So if you cast in a field, you better have fake Velcro fish in the field. Otherwise, you need to go to, I go to a local pond here in town and catch bluegill.
Right.
Yeah, it's a great way to do it.
Positive reinforcement. Catching a fish right away makes people go, oh, okay. Wow. Because, you don't have to cast well. You don't have to be leader shy. It's a park, so there's no obstructions. Those kind of things help a lot. And I think people sometimes go a little too intense, and they go, well, you got to get the waders and the boots. And they go, oh, my gosh, I don't even know what to do. Like, it's just so overwhelming for, someone who's coming into it. So,
and it doesn't have to be.
It really doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Any fish that you can cast to, you can catch on a fly rod. And so
Right.
the exception would be things that you can't cast to. So big catfish, sturgeon. I mean, they've done. I say this. There's always going to be a YouTube video. There's always going to be a comment somewhere like, "I know a guy in Idaho who caught a sturgeon on a fly rod." Okay, sure, yeah, but most people aren't. Most people aren't catching. There's one great
Right.
video these guys out in Sweden did, where they're catching halibut on a fly. That's not typical. That's
Normal.
not. You can't go off the Oregon coast and catch halibut on a fly. I mean, maybe, but am I going to invest a year worth of R&D into trying to do that? Probably not. I'll let the Swedish guys figure it out and make a YouTube video and be cool for the month online. And more power to them. Really, that's awesome that they're able to find that little niche. I think fly fishing is just a bunch of niches all melded together. Essentially, everyone has their thing.
You mentioned something that I think is really important. And it's that idea of like, you talked about the age gap between you and the guys in your club. And I think that's something that, we've talked a lot about with our guests. And it's kind of a recurring theme, is that idea of, what happens when, like, what are we doing for the younger generation to kind of get them involved with fly fishing and doing those things. We talked to a couple lodge owners who are a little bit worried about that next generation of client, right? Because the old timers with all the money, they're going to be, the inevitable's coming, right? And so is there another generation coming up that's going to be willing to go to lodges and pay for trips like that? So that's a big concern. So it's interesting you brought that up, because you are incredibly knowledgeable for your age around Oregon, your local community there, and all the things, and you're super involved. And so I just think that's awesome. I think that's really cool, because I've tried to get my kids, and I'm hoping, I've got teenagers and stuff, but none of them have really taken to it yet. And we've talked about that, Ed and I a lot about yet. We still have plenty of time. I didn't get into it until I was older, But yeah, I think that's a really huge thing. That I love the fact that you're getting involved in doing those things. And I just have to say, I saw on your website bird flies that you tied and are displayed. I'm not going to let this go by without talking about bird flies. And have you actually fished those, or are those more of like, I swear your flies are like artwork, dude. And I'm like, it's impressive. Talk about the bird fly.
Yeah, we haven't touched on it sooner. So if anything I'm known for in the fly tying world is I'm one of the select few in the world that does stack deer hair at the caliber that I do it at. And so I haven't done it in a while. I haven't done it in a few years. It is very labor intensive. It is very messy. And the hair, when I say it goes everywhere, I'm not talking about everywhere in the house or on your clothes. It is so fine when you start shaving tight bugs like that. Really, the hair is so fine, it almost aerializes, and it will get into your tear ducts, your nose, your ears, your throat. It's really irritating. Luckily, it's organic. It's not going to poison me or hurt me, but it can be very irritating. And so the issue I ran into is, one, the show shut down for COVID. So, and that's what I used to tie at shows, was stacked deer hair bass flies, very akin to the Pat Cohen style flies. So if anyone knows Pat Cohen, he's kind of retired from it. As far as I know, he may do a little bit here and there, but but those kind of style of flies. But the show shut down. And the other thing is the flies are so durable and they're so well tied, a little biased, but so well tied with it. They don't fall apart. And so I don't need to restock. It's not like tying a Euro nymph or a Parachute Adams or a bunny leech or something like that. They last indefinitely. And so, I don't have to replace them. So, but I'll pull one up here for you guys to see. But this is one out of two that I tied that are earrings.
Oh, wow. Nice. I was wondering, I was like,
these are tiny.
It's a tiny bird.
Yeah, a little tiny bird. But I've tied, the biggest one I tied was articulated just like that one was, but it was on a 6/0 hook was the hook, and it was for GTs. If anyone's watched the Blue Planet clip with the GTs hitting seabirds out of the air, they're jumping like 3 or 4 feet out of the water and grabbing birds out of the sky. A guy saw that and went, "Well, I want to fly for that." So I tied him for him, and that's really fun to do. I tied some rats for the guy down in Bolivia, some Andino deceivers, but that's the thing I'm probably the most well known for is the deer hair stuff. But what happened is you start getting typecast. It's very common in the fly fishing world. Is what happens is you get known for one thing, and then you get known for that exclusively. Everyone just goes, "You're the deer hair guy. You're the deer hair." And so it's kind of cool to be in that quote unquote exclusive club. It's very similar to the guys who do full dress Atlantic salmon flies or like traditional spay and D steelhead flies. Those kind of guys, and going to the show and being friends with Garen. Garen is in the Atlantic salmon fly world. Garen makes his own hooks, so he bought a hook company, and so he makes his own blind eye forged hooks. He forges them all himself in a shop that he built from stock steel wire from start to finish. Bends them, cuts barbs on them, sands them down, files them down. There's a process called japanning, which is that thick black coating you see on those hooks. He does the whole thing, and they're all handmade. And so he's in that world from doing woven flies and that. I'm attached to that world because, again, like you said, it starts bending into that art world instead of just the utility world.
Right.
But that's what I found really fun with fly fishing and fly tying is there's always an art element if you want it. You can get really into the science if you want to and get really into the weeds. Curtis Fry at Fly Fish Food is one of those guys. He takes macro shots of bugs he finds on the river. He blows them up. He gets calipers out. He gets color matching to Pantone match he gets crazy into it. And that's really fun. Some people really like that. I personally like some of the science stuff too. I bring throat samples when I go on lakes, thermometers. I'm checking the weather, air pressure, doing all these kind of things. And I like that kind of stuff. But I can also get into the art of it. I love fly fishing film festivals. Love them. We usually have them come through Oregon as well. So I go to those every year. I love the art that comes out, people who paint, people who make sculptures, people who do this kind of thing. So you can go as nerdy one way or the other if you want. So, and that's really, really fun. I tell people it's like the archery of fishing essentially is what fly fishing is you can get into the reload if you go rifle hunting, or you get into fletching and designing your own camos and your own scents and your own and that's kind of, and then you make films or art or things like that, and it's just all that kind of stuff. So it's a cool community. It's very diverse in that sense.
Yeah. Speaking of community, I mean, it sounds like community is a big proponent of what got you into the sport and what keeps you in the sport. And you mentioned it back earlier when you were talking about, losing that during, COVID and all of that. What does community, the fly fishing community mean to you, and where, how would others get involved with the community as well?
So the big thing I tell, if you want to get involved with it, I'll start there. Join a club. I think Facebook's kind of a dumpster fire in general. But the only good thing I think left on that site is the groups, because the groups are very akin to the old school forums. I think some of us remember who started early in the internet on fly fishing. A lot of stuff was on those forums, and Facebook groups are kind of a great way to make those forums very user friendly. Anyone can get into it. Everyone has a Facebook. I think there's 4 billion Facebook accounts, so everyone has one. So it makes it easy to do that. So if you don't have a local club, join one of those. That's a great way to do it. Don't be afraid to reach out to people on social media. That's another thing I would tell people, like a big, big deal. Don't be afraid to shoot someone a DM. Sometimes I have my DM set up where I have to approve a DM to come in. And it's not because I'm gatekeeping anything. It's literally so I don't get, annihilated with spam. So
yeah.
When I posted those Diamond Lake pictures, I had 5 or 6 DMs, and that's great. I didn't see them for like 5 days, only because I didn't check my request messages as often as I probably should be. But yeah, so don't be afraid to do that. And then if you have it available, join a fly fishing club. And you may be the youngest guy going in there. You might be the only woman there. You might be the only person of color in it. Power through if you can. I know that can be hard for some people. Social anxiety. You're the only. You're sticking out like a sore thumb, kind of thing. I get that. And I don't want to dismiss anyone from feeling like, oh, do I really want to join this? Luckily, at least what I've seen out here on the West Coast, and specifically really in Oregon, is that they're not old world clubs. These aren't clubs that have been here since 1802. These clubs started 15 years ago at the oldest, 20 years ago. So they're not as like old boys club with old money kind of thing. So join one of those. I highly recommend that, mostly because, I mean, the selfish reason to join them is these older guys who've been fishing for 40, 50, 60 years. They don't need to catch another fish. They really don't. They don't have that fire in them to catch more fish. What they do have a fire for is to share that with other people and to go, let me take you on my boat. Do you need to borrow a fly rod? I can get you some waders. I got 5 old pairs. You know, they might have a hole in them, but I'll get you some patch. And then you get a free pair of waders. You just got to patch up. I got 20 old pairs of boots. Do you want this old fly tie material? I went to a club meeting up in the Clackamas area, which is in Portland. And some guy he was done. He was going into a retirement home. He's done. He knows he's on his last legs. I mean, it sounds a little grim to say it like that, but he donated all his stuff to the club. And anyone who showed up to the club got free of however much of it that they wanted. First come, first serve kind of thing. So if you're not part of a fly fishing club, you would never have access to that. And the cool thing is there was a new guy there that night. And so he got a bunch of free stuff. And the guys there are like, oh, this is good. You should take this. You should take this. Oh, don't take that. And they helped him out and got him a bunch of free stuff. And he's just sitting there going, thanks. And like, he never would have had access to all that material, all those flies, all the X, Y, and Z if he didn't show up to that. So those are 3 kind of simple things. So DM people, join those Facebook groups, even if that's all you use it for. That's literally all I use Facebook for. I don't see anyone's wedding photos. I don't see baby announcements. No one's graduating on my Facebook kind of thing. No one's wishing happy birthdays. It is completely as bare bones as I can get it, just so I can use the groups. And then be active on there. Don't just be a lurker. Participate, comment, like things, post stuff yourself. Those are really good places to do it. And then a club. A club's really, really good. I think I joke about when I go to the shows. Everyone ties flies in their caves. I'm sitting in my cave. I have a small apartment, and my kitchen, dining room, living room, office, fly tying space is all one space. So we just kind of tie in our caves, and then we just kind of don't talk to anybody about fly tying. So it's nice to be able to go out and do those kind of things with people. And it just, and it makes you a better fly tyer too. I mean, if you want to get better, you got to tie with people that are better, or you just got to tie a ton in general. So those are, that helps a bunch. And then fishing's the same way. If you don't have someone to kind of bust you on like, what kind of cast was that? Also being able to go, that was a great cast. I mean, right. I try to do both. Right. I try to bust someone and go, what was that? And with enough tone and inflection to know that, like, I don't really care. It's fun to kind of give each other a hard time.
Right.
But also have the tone to be able to go, damn, you just casted 70 feet. That was really good. Like,
all right.
Especially when I did the fish along, we had 3 guys out of the 6 of us. So one guy comes to me all the time. It's a friend of mine named Mike. Another guy had done it before a couple times. And then the other guys that came with us who showed up had barely fly fished, had never fly fished the jetty. And when they casted really well, I felt that it would be good to just be like, nice job. Because if you're just casting at home, no one's there to tell you did a nice job. You're just hoping that you did a good job, I guess.
Right.
And I talk about it when I first started tying flies. When my mom or my aunt or my grandmother on Facebook said, they look great, it means nothing. I know they're trying to be sweet, but they don't know what looks good and what doesn't. So it's nice. When I first had someone in the industry, I worked at a fly shop for the summer when I graduated high school. When I had the owner of that fly shop go, you tie really good flies, I was like, okay, I'll take that very seriously.
I don't know. I'd maybe lean on Granny's opinion a little more if I were you.
Yeah, I know. It's nice to have it. It's nice to have that little pat on the back when you need it. For sure. Well, I know you've given us a lot of tips on where to fish, but if we were to come out to Oregon for, call it a 4-day weekend, we were to come out and fish with you and do that. Where would you take us? Where would we eat? Where would we stay? Things like that. Let's live plan a quick trip together. So I in the notes you guys gave me, that's what I looked at, and I went, "Oh no, this is harder than it looks because it can be anything you want. That's the problem. If you want it, we got it, kind of thing." And so, give us a unique experience. I mean, we're trout bums at heart, but
it sounds like you have so many things there that we could get into. Give us a little bit of a unique experience.
So if I were to plan a 4-day trip, a 4-day like whirlwind trip, and you had probably a half day, 2 full days, and another half day, let's just call it like that, and you're willing to put in the time and the energy, you fly into PDX, and then you'd probably immediately head out to Central Oregon, just because it's not like it's close, but you can take the gorge, you can see Multnomah Falls, which is a very famous Oregon waterfall. When you think of an Oregon waterfall, it's Multnomah Falls. You don't even have to stop there. It's along I-84. So you just look to your right, you look south, and there it is. Big, giant, tall. It's the tallest waterfall in Oregon. Then you get to the Dalles, and then you start skirting down the Deschutes. The Deschutes flows right into there. So you go right down the Deschutes, and you can, depending on the time of year, you got steelhead. You always have trout. Beautiful red bands there, and then steelhead, depending on the time of year. So you have the Deschutes. And then when you get into Central Oregon, I'd probably spend a day. If you want to do rivers, we got plenty of rivers over there. The Metolius, like I mentioned earlier, one of the prettiest rivers, in my opinion, probably in the world. It's just stunning. And then you can stay in Sisters. Staying in Sisters, again, is such an exactly what people picture when they picture Central Oregon. There's ponderosa pines everywhere. The town is one of those towns that I love where they are mandated to theme the entire town. So the McDonald's and the supermarket and the little shops all look the same.
Fly fishing Disney World.
Yeah, there's a great fly shop in there, Fly Fisher's Place. It's one of my favorites. It's literally a house that they've converted into a fly shop, so they've just knocked down walls. There's different flooring in every single room. They're all at different levels. You got to take weird steps. It's creaky. Phenomenal. Great kind of fly shop. You don't want a fly shop that's too clean, in my opinion.
Right.
You want a fly shop that feels like it's busting at the seams. Nothing makes sense. Why is the heater running in the summer? Because the air conditioner's also running. It's like one of those kind of places. Weird music is playing. It's not what you'd expect. Those are the kind of shops. And the Fly Fisher's Place in Sisters is that. So you can do the rivers there. We got a bajillion lakes. There's a road in Oregon called the Cascade Lake Highway. And that is a dozen blue ribbon still water opportunities. So then after you spend the day there, you spend the half day and day in Central Oregon, you boogie on down through Eugene. Eugene, again, is very iconically Oregon. And then you have the opportunity to fish the McKenzie and or the Middle Fork of the Willamette. Both great tailwaters. The McKenzie is super well known. So you spend a day there, and then before the day is over, maybe you fish the morning and early afternoon. You head over to, I prefer Newport as my coastal city. You head over to Newport. You can either head straight over and then take the 101, which is when people think it's the highway that runs from Washington to California, down in Southern California. It's where they shoot all the famous car commercials that are along the cliffs. Malibu's on the 101, so it's the coastal highway. You take it to Newport, and you fish the jetty that night. That would give you an opportunity to enjoy that kind of saltwater fishing, give you that kind of diversity. And then you would head back to the valley, or let me rephrase it. You'd actually find another coastal river and fish some of those coastal streams. If you come this time of year, we don't have any anadromous fish in those rivers, so all our coastal rivers, things like the Nestucca, the Nehalem, they're all Native American names. So Alces, Silettes, Big Elk, all these rivers that are down there, they all flow right into the ocean, and they're all freestone, so no dams on them. So you can go up to the headwaters, and there's no anadromous fish, but there's a lot of little trout. So you can do these hike up into these old logging roads and these old other bits and bobs, and just have an unbelievable dry fly day. You'll catch every single fish on caddis and stimulators. They won't be huge, but it makes a 3-weight work out a little bit. It's fun to fish like an 8-weight the night before and then a 3-weight the next morning. It's kind of a weird kind of dichotomy. And then that would get you the last day, and you kind of work your way up through the valley, kind of hitting this, that, and the other. We have the Willamette River is full of smallmouth, so you can fish into the tributaries. You can come through Albany, which is where which is one of the cities I grew up in, and they have the Calapooya there, and you can catch a smallmouth there if you wanted to, or whatever. And then you can work your way back up towards Portland and stop at fly shops along the way. That would be kind of like a crazy whirlwind trip. I mean, you're getting as little sleep as you possibly can. You're fishing a ton of stuff. You have to bring a 3, 5, 6, 8 weights with you with corresponding lines. It would be kind of nuts to do. But you'd get a real taste of Oregon. And then when it comes to food, you got to get Mexican food when you're out here. We have a huge Latino population in Oregon. from mostly Mexico, but a lot of other, South and Central American countries. Mexican food out here is incredible. It's one of those things that when my dad does a ton of traveling, he goes to Mexico, ironically, a lot, but he also goes around the country doing traveling for work. And he'll go somewhere, someone will recommend, like one of his colleagues, oh, we should go get Mexican food. And he says it's trash compared to California, Oregon, Washington. It's great. And then we have a lot of Asian population here. So we have a great, Thai and Chinese foods kind of stuff. But definitely, I would definitely recommend Mexican food, like little street tacos, or like in Salem, there's a place I like that just does birria tacos. That's all they do.
Wow.
They have weird hours, which is great. Let you know that they're
Yeah.
legit. So
That's legit.
Yeah, so it's great. You do those kind of things. If you're into beer, wine, or cider, they're all within an arm's reach of you in Oregon. There's over 400 breweries in Oregon, so there's something somewhere. And then when it comes to a place to stay, you just stay in the places that kind of amplify Oregon. So like in Sisters, you can stay in a hotel in Sisters because they're all themed per the city mandate. But I went out to Sisters with my family. I have a brother who lives in Phoenix, and he's married with a kid. And before they had the kid, they came out to Oregon, and we spent the time in Sisters. We also went to Clear Lake. Clear Lake's really cool. It's a lake that you can see all the way to the bottom, so all 60 feet down. It's exactly when it is unbelievable. It's the headwaters of the Mackenzie, so it's just spring fed. People scuba dive in there because they can just see everything. It's a flooded forest from a lava flow. So lava flowed into the river, dammed it up, created the lake. It's really cool. So we went there and we hung out in Sisters, and we stayed in someone's Airbnb there, and it was a cabin. So you can have that kind of feel. Coast, there's so many coastal hotels. I wouldn't be able to tell you which one, but one that's like right on the water that you can be on the coast and do that. And then other little kind of things here and there. I'm not picky. The way I look at a hotel, really, it's just a place to flop, just a place to sleep.
Right.
In between fishing. So like I'm going out and speaking out at the Central Oregon Fly Fishing Club in Bend. I'll stay at a Holiday Inn. I'm staying there because I'll get a free breakfast in the morning, and I'm going to be there to sleep, eat the free breakfast, and then go fishing. I'm just
right.
That's the whole point.
On this trip that you've laid out for us, flopping is the only option, which we're cool with.
You don't need somewhere fancy.
Yeah.
You don't need somewhere that's, you want it somewhat comfortable. You don't want to stay in a flea bag kind of motel, but some guys will there's so much camping here too. You can camp if you want to. But if I were to plan that, that's what it would be. If you really wanted to dig into it, you just pick one of those regions and then hang out there the whole time. So those are the kind of things. That's a whirlwind trip. That's a lot. It's also something I would warn people on. I hear this from guys who do destination stuff just because I tie flies for them. People really, really aren't used to fishing 5 days in a row. People aren't used to doing that. I'm certainly not. I don't do it that often. Even fishing all day on Memorial Day weekend and having Sunday, Monday off, and then fishing again that following Saturday. That's all. It doesn't sound like a lot when you fish one weekend and one weekend. It really it depends. When you're casting all day and doing that, and then when you're fishing the jetty's a night game, so you're fishing it from the night at night. So it's not like you're going to bed early on that night.
Right.
You're staying up late. And but I think it's worth it. It's really, really a lot of fun. You're not going to get a fish of that size to pull on an 8-weight period in fresh water. It's just not possible.
Right.
So those are the kind of experiences, especially if you're someone who's from a landlocked state. You're from Arizona, Utah, Colorado, Idaho. You never get that. If you come in the fall, winter, springtime, you have anadromous fish, which again, a lot of people don't. I would even argue that even the guys in the Midwest who have Great Lake fish, everyone says it, but I'm just saying they're the first salmon I hooked on a fly rod. The comment I made to my friend Gabe when we were there is, this is the first thing I've ever felt that feels electric. When people say, it feels like electric, electricity's in the air, it feels very, it's very symbolic. But the rod hummed with the fish. It was unbelievable. It's one of those things where you're like, well, I can never not do this. I have to do this every year, period. Because, I had a Chinook salmon burn the drag out of a reel. It wasn't a nice reel, but completely ruined the reel. No drag system in it anymore.
Wow.
It binds, it squeaks, it's terrible. But that's because I had a 35-pound fish fresh out of the ocean on.
Right.
That's awesome.
You don't. It's a very unique experience. So having that opportunity would be great. The problem with anadromous fish is timing it's a crapshoot. Like with hatches, I don't know how it is in your neck of the woods, but we have a very famous hatch in May on the Deschutes. It's the salmon fly hatch. When you have 3-inch bugs flying in the air and fish eating them so much that when you catch one, their bellies are crunchy with them, how many salmon flies they're eating.
Wow.
By the time you hear that it's happening, you've missed it. Unless you're able to go the next day. But what happens is someone hears about it on a Monday and they try to hit it Saturday and they just can't. And you know what? They've missed it, and then they're on the river with 300 other anglers who are trying to hit it as well. You just kind of have to go and hope. But the tip I'd give people who are trying to time something like that is find the hatch right before or right after the advertised hatch, because when you have that coming out, you can miss it by a little bit and still have a great dry fly fishing time or a great whatever fishing time, and then you get less people. So those are my. I know it's fun to catch them on a salmon. Catching a fish on a 3-inch long salmon fly is really cool. Speaking from experience, it's really fun to have that happen. But I mean, I'm okay with a 1.5, 2-inch golden stone as well, and that's the hatch right after the salmon fly, or catching them on caddis all day long.
Right.
As the next hatches that come up. So I get it. People want to do those kind of things. And we have a few of those: green drake hatch on the Matolia, salmon fly hatch on the Deschutes, salmon fly hatch on the Rogue. And then we have all our anadromous fish runs that are really, really popular. Steelhead, salmon, half pounders, sea run cutthroat. I mean, sea run cutthroat, great anadromous fish. You're not going to see a soul in the river. Not a soul. No one fishes for them. Nice. They're the forgotten fish. I'm speaking. That's that's my topic in Central Oregon next month is sea run cutthroat. Just no one touches them. They're there. They will rip a 5-weight out of your hand. I mean, you don't fish for them with 7, 8s, and 9s. You fish them with 4, 5s, and 6. But they'll rip a 5-weight out of your hand. They'll hit a fly like a fish is supposed to. And they're hot and they're chrome. So, and then not a soul. Not a soul.
Wow.
So it's really cool to have that. And they're basically from Eureka, California to Anchorage. Any river that flows into the ocean has them. So it's really cool kind of deal. I mean, they're really well known up in Washington and the Puget Sound, but Oregon rivers are really cool too. So it's one of those things where I've really talked up Oregon as far as Oregon fishing goes, and it's definitely worth it.
This has been awesome, man. You're full of awesome knowledge and everything. And it'd be great to kind of wrap this all up with some short rapid fire questions if you're up for it.
Yeah.
Cool. What is one thing that you're currently celebrating in your life?
Oh, yeah. So the big thing, again, it's one of those things I thought I would mention earlier, and that is I got Fly Tyer of the Year through Oregon FFI at the expo at the show. So I was awarded.
Congrats, man. That's awesome.
And that's not to let people know what it is. It's not because I tie the coolest flies. I'm sure that's part of it.
The duck didn't win it?
No, that got me first place at the state fair like 4 years ago, but not this one. So it's more so fostering, educating, and encouraging fly fishing, well, specifically fly tying in the state of Oregon. It's only for Oregon residents. It's for guys that do it. It's that kind of thing, which it's one of those things when they presented the award, they said it's been a long time coming, but you got to earn it. And I always felt like I was too young because, again, I'm the youngest guy by X amount of years every time. But I had to remind myself as I got it that I've been doing this for 15 years now. It's not something I've been doing since yesterday. Very similar to this year feels very big for me. I don't know how big you are into pop music, but Chappell Roan's a big pop star. She's kind of blown up huge this year, but she's been doing this for 15 years as well, or 10 years or whatever it's been. And the saying goes, it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. And that's kind of what it feels like this year. Not saying that's really the case for me. It's very different, apples and oranges kind of thing. But a lot of things have come up, being on being on multiple podcasts. You guys, I think, are I've been on a few kind of thing. And then having that award, being known, and just, again, you kind of feel like a mayor when you're walking around the fly fishing show and everyone's like, hey, Garrett, it's that kind of thing. So I got to meet a bunch of people. I went up to a show up in Washington, got to meet I got to meet Tim Flagler and Phil Rowley and other guys. Who are nice. So those are kind of, it feels good. It feels like I've got it. So yeah, that's the big win of the year, I think, is getting Fly Tyer of the Year from the Oregon Council. So
Right on. That's awesome. Give us one piece of content, book, video, series, whatever show you're watching that you'd recommend to our listeners.
So show I'm watching. So I'm a big movie guy. So I'll give you my.
Nice.
So I love movies. I can go with.
Are you a comedy movie or a serious movie
If
guy?
it comes with comedy, I go with stand up. I love stand up when it comes to comedy. Comedy movies are really subjective. My favorite comedy would be Napoleon Dynamite. It's very subjective. Comedy is one of those hard things. It never wins any awards, but comedy for sure is that. I love dramas and thrillers and things like that. So I usually tell people my favorite movie is Drive. It's a Ryan Gosling movie, 2011. Great cast, slow burn movie. There's people who loved it. I'm one of those, and the people who hated it thought it was going to be like Need for Speed, and it's not. There's like 2 driving scenes in it. It's really a slow. I really like it. Show I'm watching right now is the show Hacks. It's on HBO. It's the premise is an older female comedian who does a residency in Vegas is kind of becoming a little washed out. So she hires a recently canceled female comedian from LA to come help her write. And it's their dynamic between someone who's in their 70s and someone who's my age, in their late 20s. And it's I've laughed out loud every episode, which is really nice. But my comfort show that I've watched, more repeat than anything else is Seinfeld. I grew up watching Seinfeld.
Nice.
So that's kind of that. But watch a ton of movies. I try to watch a new movie every week. The recent one I watched was Godzilla -1 because it's now on Netflix. Pretty solid movie for what it is. I mean, definitely recommend watching it subtitles and not dubbed. It's really hard to read subtitles when you tie flies, though. So take it and you leave it. I'm not a sports guy. I don't watch a lot. I don't do sports. I follow other, a little bit of college football, but not much. But yeah, movies and things like that. Love stand up. Favorite stand up is Pete Holmes. If you guys are familiar with Pete Holmes, if you guys, as far as he's very intellectual and spiritual, and he gets into a lot of cool stuff. And I find him very funny. So yeah, I watch a ton of movies because I'm tying flies and my computer's right here. I know some guys watch baseball or, watch TV shows over again or listen to music or things like that. I listen to a ton of music too. So, but yeah, movies for sure. Watch a ton.
It's awesome. What is one of your favorite fishing memories?
Yeah. So when you guys asked that, I thought about it. And so there's 3 that jump out real quick. So one, first time I went deep sea fishing, which is, I say deep sea. It's just you can still see the shore in Oregon, but it is I went with my dad. It was the first time I've we always went to the coast as a vacation. I kept asking, "Oh, can we do it? Can we do it?" And one time they finally just said yes. I was just like, "Whoa, okay, I guess we can go do this." That was really fun. That was a big moment. Going and fishing for sturgeon for the first time with my dad and my uncle on the boat up in the Portland area was really cool. I got to take the day off of school. My dad got to take the day off of work. It felt very much like, oh, this is really cool. And then that first salmon trip with my friend Gabe. Gabe and I having that first salmon trip, it is something I told him the first year we did it to the second year. I thought about it at least once a week that entire year, at least.
Wow.
It was, and what made that trip so special is one, I landed 2 Chinook and 11 chum. He probably did, I don't think he got a Chinook, but he got 8 or 9 chum salmon. So unbelievable day of fishing. We lost probably equal what we landed. It was incredible. Catching lightning in a bottle as far as salmon goes. That's unheard of to catch that many fish. So it was really great to have that. And then the way home was incredible too. So we drive through, he does excavation work. He's showing me some excavation work he's done in the past. I graded that. I moved that dirt. We stop and get gas and he pulls back onto the highway. And I go, I turned to him and go, I think we're going north. He goes, because we had to go south at this point. And he said, no, I know where we're going. I'm like, all right, fine. I mean, he works up here. I get it. Then we get up somewhere and I see a sign. I'm like, hey, man, I'm pretty sure we're going north. And if anyone knows Oregon, it is right at the curves on I-5, which is this very distinct area where the freeway goes from 65 to 45 because everyone has to do these big serpentine curves through the on the way to Portland. I'm like, hey man, we're definitely going to Portland. The problem was we couldn't get off. So the only first time place we could get off was at the Moda Center, which is where the Blazers play, and they were playing that night. It was a so a trip that should have taken us like a 2.5 hour drive back ended up being like a 4.5 hour drive back. His wife was like, "Where did you go?" He's like, "I took a wrong turn. I made a mistake." So, but it was one of those things. Having a great day, a funny story. So those are the kind of things that but those are recent. I mean, I'll probably think about that tiger trout from Diamond for a long time.
Right, right. Anytime you think about an experience once a week for a year, that's a good experience.
It's just right. As I said,
that's good.
It changes you catching a fish like that.
Right. That's awesome. Garrett, give us one piece of advice that you wish someone would have given you when you were 20, to your 20-year-old self.
Relax. It's okay. That's what I said. I said that's when my first thought came to mind is relax. And it's not because I was like really stressed out. I very much felt like everything was like on a time clock growing up, like at that age, at 18, 19, early 20s, especially until I was probably like 25, 26. I definitely felt like if I don't get this done tomorrow, it's over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's as I've gotten older and matured and had, more, I mean, I'm only 29, but having more life under my belt in the sense, it's like, even now, I always thought like, I'm the young guy. I got to be the young guy doing X, Y, and Z. I still am at 29. And so I still have plenty of time with it all. And again, it takes time to build all that kind of stuff out. When you finally hear about, like, as I said, I listen to a lot of stand-up. When you finally hear about a stand-up comedian, it's because they've been touring and working clubs for 10 or 20 years sometimes. And then you hear about him, you're like, look at this new guy. He's not new. He or she has been doing this for ever. And they finally they're at the right place, right time, right person, and then then they get brought up into the mainstream. And that's kind of how it feels now. So relax. The other thing I would say is I really should have pushed myself when I was younger to try the guiding. I never have guided did fly fishing guiding. It's just, I wanted to try to go to guide school and try to chase summers, try to do the summers in Alaska and then chase the summer down in, the Southern Hemisphere, try to do something like, in Australia, New Zealand, Chile, Argentina, something like that. And I never did that. I did the college move, which is fine. I don't think I'm unsuccessful with that kind of thing, but it would have been nice to just see what it was. So I would recommend someone, if you're younger and you're thinking about it, just try it. It's just like competitions. If you're like, I don't know if I like competitions, do one. I mean, all it's going to cost you is gas and a hotel at the most. At the least, it's just going to cost you gas in the day. It's definitely worth trying it to see if you like it. Try to tie. Just try something different and relax. It's okay.
It's great. It's great advice.
Yeah,
that's great advice.
What is your definition of community?
The people you choose to have around you. I think that's the big thing. And I think it's incredibly important. I think choosing people to have around you instead of just assuming these are the people you have to have around you. I think people, I say choosing, even if they are family, choosing to have those family members around you at that specific times, choosing to have certain friends, significant others, whatever it may be. People feel very much, they get in this idea and I think it comes from being in school where you have to be by somebody. You have to take, you're there from 8 hours a day, you're in this, or you do sports or extracurriculars. You have to do a play with someone you don't like, or you have to do that. And you're just like, well, this is just what life is. And we kind of get that with coworkers. You can't change your coworkers. You got to deal with what you got to deal with. But when it comes to it, making a community outside of places where you have to be, school and work, is big. I think Americans don't do a very good job of that. I think one of my favorite lines from the show, The Office, Michael Scott talks about this. He says, yeah, Jim and I are really good friends. We hang out a lot, mostly at work. And that's how most people are. They go, yeah, we're really good. We just only hang out at work. And that's, to me, that's your community. But having a community outside of work, I think, is so fulfilling, because then it can be more constant, because your employer can just let you go anytime, or it can go out of business, or you need to move or whatever, and not having that kind of thing is big. Like I look at it now, having like to give you an idea of like a change that happened, Hairline is moving from Oregon. They were 45 minutes away from me down in Monroe, Oregon. They're now moving to Michigan. That was announced yesterday publicly to everybody. It's big. They're moving where Keough, who owns Hairline, that's where they're located. So they're moving to Michigan, in the lower panhandle of Michigan. And so, or lower peninsula of Michigan. And so that's big. And that means there's people that I used to see on Saturdays when I'd pop in the shop, when fishing season's kind of over, and BS with them for a while. The guys who worked at Hairline, they're not going to be there anymore. They're not going to pop in. And that's a bummer, but they're not strangers. It means that they're going to be there in Michigan, and I'm going to be here in Oregon. And it's that just expands your ties even further. Like there's a guy who messaged me. It was really cool. He messaged me on social media asking me about X, Y, and Z, and I told him I was going to be at a show, and he drove all the way from Portland to Bellevue, Washington to come see me at a show because he wasn't going to see me at a different one. And so those are the kind of things he's chosen to put me in his community, and I've chosen to reciprocate that kind of thing. And so I think that's what it comes down to, is choosing who you want to be in your life.
Love it. Love the idea of choice. It's good.
So we've started doing this thing between our previous guests and the current guests we're talking to, of having them ask a question for the next guest to answer. And so we have a question for you from our last guest, which was Afuera Outdoors, name's Joshua Torres. And he said, or asked, where's your favorite place to fish? And then he added the caveat of put the screws to him and really get the secret details out of him. So
that's very funny. Favorite place to fish. God, spoiled with choice here in Oregon. I would say the place that I look forward to the most fishing right now, it has the most days out of the year on it, to the point where I'm like, I gotta chill out here and go try somewhere else instead, is this lake called Three Creeks Lake. So it's like 2 hours from my house. I drive to Sisters. Once you get to downtown Sisters, you just turn south, and then the road ends at the lake. It's like 40 acres or something like that. It's a small lake. The deepest point is like 25 feet. It's loaded with rainbows. They stock it, and then it's loaded with brook trout. It is right in the crux of the Cascade Mountain Range. So you get mountains and snow most of the year. It is phenomenal. I look forward to fishing it every opening day. Essentially, as soon as the road they have gates that are closed because of the snow that's up there. But as soon as the snow is clear and the gates are open, I head right on up. Last year they had to repair the road, so I didn't get to fish until mid-July. It was one of my best fishing days of the year, was that trip, because they had stocked it, but no one was allowed to fish it because the road was closed for repair. So it was just an unbelievable fishing day, and it's so pretty. And the best part is coming back down into Sisters, and you can there's this smokehouse in Sisters that has these unbelievable sandwiches. I'm a huge sandwich guy. The dry fly fishing can be incredible. You don't even have to have a float tube or a pontoon. There's no motors allowed of any kind on the lake. So no gas, no electric, nothing. So you either got to paddle or kick or walk the shore, and you can have if I lived in Sisters, I would be there every single day after dinner.
Nice.
And catching the Calabasas hatch. It would be one of those kind of things. So yeah, that's up there. The other one would probably, I do love the jetty. The jetty's pretty hard to beat when it's really good. Like right now, it's really good. So
yeah.
Right on.
What's the name of that sandwich shop? I like sandwiches.
So it's Sisters Meat and Smokehouse.
Okay.
Sisters Meat and Smokehouse.
So they have every kind of meat you'd want. They have cured meats. It's a butcher shop, so they have all that. They also have a ton of different fish and sausages, wines, different. Gosh, what else? And then they have the sandwiches. It's a whole deal, and it's right in the middle of downtown. Totally worth it. So it's having that and being like, all right, I just had to me, I'm sure you guys will agree with this, that meal you have after you come fishing on the way home it almost doesn't matter where you go. I remember fishing all day, and we went to a Five Guys, which is, the buns disintegrate. It's fine, but I was so hungry. It was so good. But coming down off a mountain and having like a pastrami sandwich before you head home,
boom.
Awesome. Awesome.
No, that could also just be a good way to get into a car accident as you fall asleep because you're just like,
it's nice to have a co-pilot in situations like that. You gotta have an
Yeah, for
active
sure.
podcast or
Coma.
good music
No
rolling
doubt.
on the window.
No
For
doubt.
sure.
Well, what's your question for our next guest?
My question would be, what do you see growing in the industry, and or what are you doing to bring new blood into the sport? And when I say new blood, it doesn't have to mean young people, but just a new person. I did a podcast when I was at the expo this year, and the question it got brought up, like, where's the industry going? Kind of like what we talked about earlier in the show. And the comment I made is, I see a lot of stuff on social media. I'm seeing stuff on TikTok. I'm seeing stuff on Instagram. I'm seeing stuff on Facebook from young people doing stuff. And again, it's all relative, kind of young people. The other comment I made was, every fly shop sold out of 9-foot 5 weights. Every fly shop, every big box store, every online, retailer of it all, they sold out of 9-foot 5 weights. And then everything else. They also, every guitar shop sold out guitars, every bike shop sold out bikes during the pandemic. They just sold out of everything. People wanted stuff to do because they couldn't travel, they couldn't do X, Y, and Z. So someone bought all those 5 weights, and I haven't seen them all flood Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist quite yet. So that means someone has them. And so what are people doing to reach out to the people who have it and let them know, hey, we're over here, come hang out with us and fish and tie flies? Because what it really comes down to is we do love having this, being secluded and being away from everybody and not having to deal with, a bajillion people or those paddle or rubber hatches that we have. I 100% get that. Don't get me wrong. The comment I made to my friends when I fished diamond the first time this year is, this is an incredible lake. I don't want this to be lake crowded, but I also don't want this to go the way of the dodo. I don't want this to become, oh, we're going to take our 10-mile-an-hour speed limit off the lake and just make it a rip around lake. That would be a huge bummer. I'd rather have it, I'd rather compete with a dozen more boats on the lake that are fly fishing. The lake is huge. It's like 3,500 acres. I can deal with 12 more boats on there. I can deal with 100 more boats probably. I mean, it may not be, it might not be 100% fun. It might be only 90% fun, but that's still pretty fun. So,
Right.
And the thing is,
Right.
then it would force me to then explore outside of that. That means I got to hike a little bit further. I got to fish a different side of the lake. I have to do X, Y, and Z. And so that's why I would want people involved. That's the big issue, because I'm not really worried about the money. The money is going to go somewhere. It doesn't like the money. When someone dies, it's not like they burn all the money. If someone passes away, they're going to give it to their kids, their grandkids, their significant other who's still around. So the money's going to, people will have money to fly fish and participate in the hobby. But are they going to be in it enough to be able to keep the resources we have? I think out west we are very privileged. I talked to a guy who's from Pennsylvania, and he can't go fishing without seeing somebody. It doesn't matter how secluded he goes. More deer tags are sold in Pennsylvania than any other state, which just blew my mind when I read that stat.
Wow.
That's crazy. There's so many people there, and having a place like Oregon or any of the other Western states, even as crowded as Colorado is, you can still get away from people. Still opportunity to do that. So I'd rather have more people in it and more people involved. It's really fun to have it. You can share resources. It doesn't make it as expensive as it can be. Fly fishing is an expensive hobby, if we're being really honest here.
Right.
But having people who have stuff, have resources, like, I'm only 29. I have a spare float tube now. I just don't have spare flippers yet. But eventually I'll have those kind of things, and I can bring someone else along who doesn't have it. I invited a buddy out to the jetty. He's like, oh, I don't have the gear. I was like, I do. Come. I'll give you a stripping task. I'll give you a rod. It's fine. And having those more people in there that have that kind of stuff helps bring more people in, and then it should be like, a snowball effect. That's what I'm hoping, at least on paper. So.
Right on. It's good. Well, Garrett, this has been a great conversation. Really enjoyed the time and getting to know you a little bit more and what you're doing. And we really appreciate you taking time and being with us. Can't wait, dude. We got to hook up. My folks are out there, and so I'm probably going to be out there in the next couple months. I'll just bring Ed along with me, and maybe we could get together and do some fishing. We'd really love that. Take us out on the jetties, dude. I don't have an 8-weight, but
you guys would like it a lot. Bring a Type 5, bring an 8-weight.
Amen. all the way.
So yeah, no, I really appreciate you guys having me on. It's been really fun.
Great. Well, we'll do it again soon, and really appreciate the time, and best of luck with all the fly tying.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Oh man, that was a great conversation.
That was fantastic, dude. Okay, so here's the thing. If that doesn't get you pumped to go fish Oregon, I don't know what will, Eddie.
Seriously, he is Mr. Visitor Center of Oregon right there for fishing.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to get out there and do some fishing with him. Just the amount of diversity in fishing that he gave us in terms of knowledge and understanding about all the different kinds of fishing you can do out there. Incredible. My folks live in Oregon and I've fished out there a little bit, and I say like a little bit, but I had no idea, dude. I am, that's impressive.
No idea that you could get into all those different species, all those different styles of fishing. It's sort of probably sounds stupid, but sort of a hidden gem. To them, it's probably not, but to me, it sounds like a hidden gem.
Absolutely. The other thing I think that's impressive about Garrett through that discussion, I think, is his dedication to doing something that he loves. He started tying flies pretty early on, and he's only in his late 20s or whatever, but he dove right in, and he has become such a great fly tyer doing something that he is talented with. He found something that's a talent of his and chased that and has become passionate about it, I think, and found ways to be a part of, communities in terms that build him up and support him through that. And he's finding ways, to spread that joy and that kind of stuff to others through his fly tying and his talking and his, the events that he's attending and doing. And so I think that part of it's just impressive, dude. It's really impressive to see somebody so young find something like that and be so engaged with it and be so good at it. So that was really cool to see that in him, and to see his passion and joy kind of in that stuff is pretty cool.
Heck yeah. I mean, yeah, just the amount of dedication that it takes to tie that many flies. I was doing the math in my head on when he was talking about how many flies he's tying. He's tying, a couple dozen a day, every day for the year to hit kind of those numbers. It's like, man, that's a lot. That's a lot of love right there into your sport, your hobby. That's awesome.
Weeks. Yeah, it takes me weeks to tie like a couple dozen flies. So it's impressive all around. But just a good dude. Yeah, that was fun. I can't wait to get out there and do some fishing with him.
Seriously, there's some adventure there for sure. So, well, this was another great conversation this week.
Absolutely, bud. Good job, man.
We'll catch up again soon.
Look forward to the next.
Yep.
Sounds good, brother. Love you, man.
Love you, buddy. Talk to you.
Bye.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening. Make sure to visit our website, guysfishingweekend.com, to check out the GFW merch, sign up for our newsletter, and learn how to get involved with the community. We appreciate you spending even a little bit of your week with us, and are glad to have you along on the journey. Stay legendary and happy fishing.